Hello, I'm Francesca Maxime. Thanks so much for joining us here in New York City. You're watching Arise News Weekend, where you'll get deeper insight into stories making headlines all around the world. In this half hour, Denmark is on high alert after one person dies in a terror attack, and the killers remain on the loose. Plus, the bullets expected to stop flying in the Ukraine after a long-awaited ceasefire comes into effect. And happy Valentine's Day. 9 couples in Thailand dance straight into the Guinness Book of World Records. We have those stories and much more straight ahead. Thanks so much for joining us. While the manhunt is on in Denmark after a terror attack there. One person was killed and 3 others injured by at least 1, possibly 2 gunmen as they gathered in Copenhagen to talk about free speech.
Danish police in the capital Copenhagen raced to the scene of a shooting. It happened inside a cafe and cultural center during a meeting attended by a controversial cartoonist who had received death threats for publishing images of the Prophet Muhammad. Police say 1 civilian was killed, 3 police officers were wounded, and 2 suspects fled the scene in a car. The gathering was billed as a debate on art and blasphemy, and the artist in attendance was Lars Vilks, seen here in 2010. He stirred controversy in 2007 with published images depicting Muhammad as a dog, and an American woman was sentenced to 10 years in prison 2 years ago for plotting to kill him.
This should be a small thing, really, to insult a religion. You cannot make any exceptions for religion. I mean, that's the point. I mean, this should be the same rules as we have for Christianity or the Jewish religion or whatsoever.
Danish media say both Vilks and the French ambassador, who was also there, were both unharmed. Just over a month ago, 17 people were killed in France over 3 days of violence linked to satirical images of Muhammad in the French weekly Charlie Hebdo. French President François Hollande says his interior minister will go to the Danish capital as soon as possible. Police were scouring the area for the suspects, and neighboring Sweden is said to be helping in the search.
Well, police have released a picture of a person that they say is connected to the attack. The attacker fled the scene almost immediately by hijacking a car. Mana Rabier has the latest on that. The injured police officers do not have any life-threatening injuries. The getaway car that was used has been found about 10 miles from the scene. The Danish Prime Minister says the entire country remains on high alert. Well, the terror that was caused by Boko Haram, well, it continues to spread. The militant group has carried out its first deadly attack on the country of Chad. Boko Haram killed several people when it stormed a fishing village. Chadian troops fought back against the attackers, forcing them from the village. 2 militants were killed and others injured.
The reports that we've received, the town was attacked by about 30 militants using boats. They attacked parts of the town itself. The chef de canton himself was killed. We were in contact with a refugee during the attack, but the phone line went dead. We're still trying to find out more about the situation there.
Well, the attack is seen as retaliation for Chad joining Nigeria, Niger, and Cameroon in a military coalition against the group. But the terror group did try to continue its streak across northeast Nigeria, invading the city of Gombe, but Nigerian troops repelled that attack. It is not known whether there were any casualties. Before fleeing the town, Boko Haram left behind leaflets warning of even more violence if Nigerians vote in the upcoming presidential elections next month. Those elections were actually supposed to be held on February 14th, but were postponed while the coalition forces fight Boko Haram. And today, of course, marks the 10-month anniversary of the kidnapping of the 276 schoolgirls from Chibok, Nigeria, by the Islamic extremist group. Now, to date, only 50 girls have returned to their families. Priya Sridhar with Arise News has this report from Nigeria.
It was the story of this community and these 276 girls that captured Nigeria and the world. Snatched from their school by the Islamist extremist group Boko Haram, their relatives turned to their country for answers.
Those security, like soldier men, they were too small. Their number is too small, and those Boko Haram attacked them and they ran away. And I feel sad. Had it been they were much in number and they were well equipped, then they will do something themselves.
While the Bring Back Our Girls campaign received international attention, today, 10 months after that horrible night, the daily meeting of the campaign has far fewer attendees.
We live in a world where people are distracted per second because we have so many things that go on around the world. And so it is not unusual at all that people who were paying attention to the anguish of these 219 girls have moved on to other things. But what our movement has done is essentially to say that there has not been any closure.
While domestic and international support for the Bring Back Our Girls campaign might be dwindling, these people say they're committed to finding out where those girls are. There have been some reports that the girls may have crossed the border from Nigeria into Chad and Cameroon, but there's still little official evidence as to where exactly they're located. This is where they were last seen, in Chibok, in Borno State, one of 3 states in northeastern Nigeria under a state of emergency because of the Boko Haram insurgency. The militants have killed thousands during their 6-year spree of brutal killings and displaced millions more. This man has 3 nieces and 3 cousins who were kidnapped from Chibok.
Are you scared thinking about what could have happened to them?
No, I'm not scared. I'm angry. I'm angry about it, but I'm not scared. I'm angry because you have a government in place that maybe you are depending on the government, that government will protect you. And the government is not protecting you.
He says now, almost a year after their capture, he still is no closer to learning answers about where his relatives are. With the postponement of the 2015 presidential elections to deal with the Boko Haram insurgency, some here have a renewed sense of hope.
And President Goodluck Jonathan says that Boko Haram will be contained in 6 weeks, and with collaboration from neighboring countries, there is more hope that the girls will be rescued. Again, that was Arise News' Priya Sridhar in Abuja, Nigeria. Well, in Ukraine, it is a matter of what happens now. As of midnight in Ukraine, a ceasefire has gone into effect between Ukrainian forces and separatist rebels. We know that the 2 sides spent the day shelling each other, though, trying to gain more territory just ahead of that peace agreement. At least 7 were killed in that latest round of gunfire. The ceasefire was negotiated last Thursday in 4-power talks. It creates a neutral buffer zone and calls for the withdrawal of heavy weapons. But at least 5 people have been killed in the conflict. It is the worst crisis in relations between Russia and the West since the Cold War a generation ago. Still to come, look at the new status of Dominican citizens of Haitian descent. You're watching Arise News Weekend.
The best way to predict the future is to create it. There's a special breed of achievers out there that are called tomorrow's people, the highly creative ones who live in the future. They imagine what will be and strive to make it happen. They're bold. They refuse to wait for the future. Tomorrow bends and conforms to their ideas. At Access Bank, we share the same sentiments. We've been able to grow our bank to become a leading player in Nigeria with a strong presence across the continent, adopting best practice in everything we do. Our mantra for success is simple: speed, service, and security. Those who shape tomorrow strive for and demand perfection. At Access Bank, our service culture of speedy response and drive for excellence is the blueprint for creating customer experiences that will echo for generations. Come, let's work together and take tomorrow.
Welcome back to Arise News Weekend. Just a quick correction on the previous story there. Of course, 5,000 people killed so far in the Russia-Ukraine conflict, not 5. Well, in Mexico, at least 16 people are dead following a crash between a freight train and a passenger bus. 31 others are also reported to be injured after that bus apparently went right to cross the tracks as the train approached. The oncoming train cut the bus in half. Officials are trying to figure out if the bus driver was trying to beat the train when that vehicle was struck. Well, to the north now in Canada, a St. Valentine's Day mass murder-suicide plot has been foiled. Police have arrested 3 individuals accused of plotting to open fire in Halifax in a shopping mall today, killing as many as possible. They then planned to take their own lives. A 4th suspect was found dead in a residence.
Based on what we know so far, it would have been devastating. Mass casualties were a real possibility. A day known to represent love and affection could have taken a much different meaning today had it not been for the exceptional efforts of combined law enforcement community.
Well, they still don't have a motive or the names of the suspects. Well, they haven't been released yet. Officials say that they got a tip about the whole thing on Thursday morning. The Dominican Republic has put new restrictions on Dominican citizens of Haitian origin, and just last week, a Haitian man was found hanging from a tree in the 2nd largest city in the Dominican Republic. Here to discuss these events is Gary Pierre. He's the publisher of the Haitian Times. Welcome, and thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure, Francesca.
So, Gary, first of all, explain to me what these new rules in the DR mean for Haitians who were born in the DR.
Well, basically, the rules is that the Haitians who were born in the Dominican Republic retroactively 1929. So basically, if their families came to the DR in 1929, they are no longer Dominican citizens.
They're revoking the citizenship of people who were at the time legitimately born in the Dominican Republic if they have Haitian descent.
Exactly, and they have to prove that they don't have any Haitian lineage, and that's a very difficult task.
As someone who is both Dominican and Haitian and also Italian, I find this whole thing ridiculous because it really speaks to what I think is a racial issue, the Dominican Republic being mostly white and obviously Haiti being mostly black. And to that end, just last week, we saw a man lynched in the 2nd largest city in the Dominican Republic, hanging from a tree, a shoe shine man who was working there. People said that, no, this was about a robbery and not anything about race. Do you buy that?
Well, it's really a personal dispute. That I agree with. But I think the government has created a climate by which people feel emboldened to do something like that. And the tragedy is that the Haitian government is so unstable that it really cannot do anything. And the international community, the human rights organizations, have done precious little. And I wonder if it was a white country doing that to a black country, what would have happened? I'm sure there would be outrage, and there should be outrage in this instance because this is unacceptable. This is going too far. Enough already.
Well, you just mentioned the lack of a Haitian government. We know that there have been, as is often the case, upheavals in the Haitian government. What do you think they could possibly do once a new government is formed and installed to help combat some of these measures that the DR is doing?
Well, I mean, I think this is beyond Haiti's capability. I truly believe that. Imagine, Francesca, if our grandchildren were no longer told they were Americans because they were not, their parents were Haitians or Dominican, and so they're revoking
Even if
them.
they were born in the U.S.
And so this doesn't really make sense. And frankly, again, the Haitian government is so weak right now. There's very little that it can do because it depends economically on the Dominican Republic, so that it has to be real careful in its dealings with the Dominican Republic.
Why does the DR have such a problem with Haitians?
Well, there's a long history on that, and I don't think we have time right now. But the short version of it is that for 150 years, these two countries have been at it. But in the last 100 years, I think Haiti has been at the end of the stick. And, there's been massacres of Haitians by Dominican officials. There's been a lot of issues. I think part of the problem is that the Dominicans fear that the Haitian invasion of the country. Santiago, where this occurred, is a really interesting dynamic because there you have most of the universities there. You have a large percentage of Haitian students in Haiti. I think part of that ruling is that they're realizing that if this trend continues, come 20, 30, 40 years, whenever, that Haitians will be indeed a majority and most educated people in the country, and they are fighting that. But the way they are fighting it is really barbaric.
They want to be very nationalistic about the whole thing. Where do you go from here? I mean, where do the folks who are Haitians, who are, born in the Dominican Republic, what do they do? Where will they go?
Well, they are in limbo, essentially, unless the U.S., I think, is a power in the region, or world power, can really intervene in trying to broker and bring some sense into the Dominican government, because really this is totally unacceptable. Like I mentioned, it's amazing that this has gone on as long as it has.
Gary Pierre, we are going to have to leave it there. Obviously, a very troublesome incident last week. Hope that we do not see a repeat of that, but we're going to have to continue to monitor the situation and see what the Haitian government, once it does coalesce, comes up with.
Thank you, Francesca.
Thank you so much for joining us. All right, when we return, a rescue on the high seas. You're watching Arise News Weekend.
If I was to build my own news network, I would love a correspondent in every country, every location, every city.
Shahana Bhatt, Arise News, New Delhi.
Karim Gamaluddin, Arise News, Cairo.
Dale McEwen, Arise News, Kawagosk.
James Blue, Arise News, Addis Ababa.
Ronnie Curvelo, Arise News, São Paulo, Brazil.
We give them different angles on stories so they can get a different perspective of the people that they are looking at.
It's hard to pin down the exact number of Syrian refugees who have streamed across the border into Lebanon.
They stormed a media room in one of the hotels in Kuala Lumpur, holding placards reading, "Tell us the truth and return our families back to us."
Anchors and reporters that have covered wars, have covered disasters, have covered government shutdowns. There's nothing almost that this team hasn't experienced.
Arise News, every culture, every angle.
Welcome back. Well, it was the Italian Coast Guard to the rescue as they brought several African migrants to safety. The 275 North Africans were part of a group of 700 migrants rescued from overcrowded boats near the Libyan coast. The Coast Guard organized the rescue mission after receiving a distress signal. That rescue coming just days after more than 300 migrants died trying to cross over to Europe. Well, focusing now on Northern Africa and the Middle East, from immigration to ISIL. We'll touch base on these topics with a renowned guest on the subject, Dr. Frank Romano. He's the author of several books on the Middle East and a professor of law and history at the University of Paris and a lawyer in both France and the United States. Thanks so much for joining us, Frank.
Pleasure.
Let's start with these migrants trying to get out of North Africa and coming to Europe and dying by the hundreds repeatedly in the Mediterranean waters, despite rescue efforts by the Italian Coast Guard and such. Why are they fleeing places like Eritrea and other countries in Northern Africa?
Well, oddly enough, and as opposed to a lot of information we've been getting in mainstream news, it's a lot basically for a stabilized government, a place to raise their children without out of a war zone. And the last reason is for economic reasons, of course, but it's not, as most people think, for economic reasons first, not so.
Which is typically why people would come. But
yes.
we know that in
yes.
a case like Eritrea, for example, they're under forced military, compulsive military obligations there. And a lot of them feel as though they're being persecuted in a way by their own government. So isn't that cause to actually migrate and be allowed into countries where you do, in fact, successfully migrate, and in fact you don't perish at sea?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm an immigration lawyer, and you have a reasonable fear of persecution, which they clearly can show, also gives them the right to file for an official claim for political asylum. And absolutely, but they're being accused of just seeking a place for economic reasons, and that simply is not so.
Well, we also know that obviously, there continue to be a number of deaths that occur, as I just mentioned, hundreds and thousands since, a decade ago, especially, though, in the last 5 years or so in those Mediterranean waters. Talk to me about what the Italian Coast Guard is now not doing, because they've scaled back their operations off the island of Lampedusa, where they've rescued so many folks.
Well, they've had official effort, an effort team to get out there and in a very timely way to help the victims of shipwreck and help those even in the ship that hasn't wrecked get to shore. And now they're scaling back, and I think a lot of it has to do with the inaction of the European Union. They're looking to be subsidized and to pressure the European Union to subsidize their efforts. And they're also been told to seek free passage, and to seek free passage for these immigrants, they're going to have to provide staff and a lot of boats, and they actually are limiting those now.
All right, we're going to have to move on to ISIS and ISIL. We continue to, read headlines about their latest terror attacks. Recently, just taking over an area 5 miles away from a U.S. base in Iraq. What was the purpose there, and what do we have to fear in their latest pushes forward?
Well, and Anbar province is about 100 miles away from Baghdad, and there's a base where about over 300 American soldiers are training Iraqi soldiers. It's troublesome because, as you stated before we started the interview, our government since 2010 has been committed to moving out of Iraq. However, our soldiers being there, even on a training basis, provoked by ISIS, it looks like it could be turned into a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I'm asking my question, is that the government objective, is to get us sucked into a war because we happen to be there, in spite of the fact the official word is we're getting out of Iraq and we're only there to advise.
Well, we know that ISIS, though, continues to be very successful at recruiting and spreading its recruiting tactics throughout many countries now, including, Libya, other places within the Middle East, just as the U.S. and other Western areas are pulling out of their embassies in Yemen. What does this mean? Are we going to go back to a full-scale war in Iraq?
Well, I think the Western countries, including the United States, have got to start working. This is the reason why, I think, one of the reasons why ISIS and other extremist groups are recruiting Hezbollah and others, Hamas, is that we're not working enough with the non-Islamist groups. We had a chance to do it before. Things have really blown out of control right now with respect to what's going on there. And I think the radicalizing, we had a chance to work with the non-radical Syrians, and we turned our back on them.
The Kurds, the Peshmerga.
That's right. We had that shot. And now we had a declaration from the White House saying, well, let's start working with the non-Islamists. But 2 years ago, they couldn't stand alone. They had to ally with either Al-Qaeda or ISIS. And now it's hard to find who the non-Islamists are.
And of course, ISIS, an offshoot of Al-Qaeda. And we're going to have to continue to see what they're going to do and what we're going to do in response to that. Frank Romano,
Absolutely.
That's all we have time for right now on Arise News Weekend.
You.
Thanks for joining us. All right, still ahead, I'll look at the search for a deeper kind of Valentine. You're watching Arise News Weekend.
I believe that people are watching news less today, definitely. I think that more so people are going online to catch their news.
We've numbed the human mind to murders and all these bad things. The content is a constant loop of the same stuff. So there needs to be, new content all the time.
Arise News, every culture, every angle.
One of the great things about Arise Entertainment 360 is we have this Arise to Your Health segment, which really focuses on the holistic approach of being healthy. So we do everything from working out to juicing to getting in shape by doing fun exercises like bouncing on a trampoline or wearing these bouncy boots on our feet when we're jumping all over the set. We've done karate, we've danced the weight off, we've done just about everything. And of course, I love when we eat on set, but we do it in a very healthy and clean way.
All right, here's a story for the ladies. A new heartthrob has caught the attention of German media. Yeah, we're talking about an official in Greece. It's Yanis Varoufakis, who, if you don't know who he is, he's the Greek finance minister. His demands to negotiate Greece's debt have fallen on deaf ears, but his appeal has not gone unnoticed. Comments have been made in the media about his quote-unquote casual appearance, nice Burberry scarf there, and his flowing, I guess they're referring to the scarf, masculinity. One conservative paper even says that his motorcycle riding makes him, quote, a sex icon. I don't know about that, but okay. All right, well, who is in the mood for love? It's Valentine's Day after all, and sometimes we get so caught up in the chocolate and the roses, maybe we don't take enough time to actually look at what makes a good relationship possible if you can have it. And get this, half of American adults, well, they're single. So for those who are looking for love, and even for those who have found it but still find that there's a little room for improvement, author and psychotherapist Ken Page is here now to talk about his new book called Deeper Dating and what kinds of things that we may want to keep in mind to find true intimacy. Welcome, Ken. It's so nice to see you.
So glad to be here.
So here's your book, Deeper Dating, and intimacy. So many people seem like they say they want it, but they are afraid as all heck about it.
Yes.
Why is that?
Well, I think that's such a great question, because there's sexual intimacy, there's emotional intimacy, and the real definition of intimacy that you can find in the dictionary is characterizing our deepest nature. Well, it's easier to talk about everything else and very hard to talk about our deepest nature, but that's where the magic lies in the journey.
Well, you know, from the deeper part of it, you say that our pop culture really relies a lot on outward appearances, on things that aren't so important, like the way you look, if you're pretty or if you're handsome, or how much money you have or the car you drive. Why does that get in the way?
Well, you know, our real self is the self that someone's going to fall in love with. And all of that advice teaches us how to kind of be afraid of who we are. It's like, it looks like self-improvement, but it's really self-criticism in a great outfit. So we want to show who we really are and find the people who love what they see when we do that.
Well, you know, that you talk to daters, and a lot of them will say, yeah, I always keep falling for the wrong guy or the wrong girl, or, you know, they're poison, but I keep falling for them again and again and again. Why do people do that?
It's a fascinating thing. You know, so often the people that we're the most attracted to, and couples theory teaches us about this, we're that attracted to them because somewhere inside we know that they're going to hurt us in the ways we've been hurt before. And it's like we want to go back to the scene of the original crime and try to get them to love us right.
Very Pavlovian.
Yes, yes.
Because it's familiar, and so it's a trained pattern within our bodies that feels familiar, even if it's not really healthy for us. Here's a little other trick that a lot of people say. There's rules out there, like the books, The Rules, and Playing Hard to Get, and all of these. Does that stuff really work or not?
Well, you know, it turns out it doesn't work, and there have been great studies done, including in speed dating events, and this is what we found out, and it's kind of what we must have known somewhere inside all along. Showing enthusiasm and appreciation works a lot better than playing hard to get. You know, it's not the game playing that helps us find the real love we want, it's showing who we really are.
Showing who we really are, but you know, some people I think are afraid that if they really knew who we were, they would go near us.
You know it, and people hide it until they seal the deal, but that never works.
Well, you know, sometimes it's been said that plainer people, people who aren't so gorgeous or handsome, are actually the ones who have better success at finding lasting love. Is that true? And if so, why is that?
Well, you know, the truth of the matter is immediate attraction is not what we say it is. It's not the most important thing. A lot of relationships grow and develop when you get to know somebody. Connection builds attraction, but nobody gets taught that. And you know, if you think about the young, gorgeous, successful people you know, are they one drop more likely to be in long-lasting, healthy relationships?
No.
No, because those aren't the skills of intimacy.
And you also say it's a good idea to hold off on sexual intimacy.
I do, yes, because sexual intimacy without the same amount of real connection is like Miracle-Gro for our fear. One partner's always going to end up or almost always going to end up afraid and wanting to flee, and the other one is going to end up needy. When you let the two things develop at their own pace, the emotional connection and the sexual excitement, that's really where magic builds.
You know, Ken, I wanted to ask you about a couple of other things, your theory of the wave, but we're not going to get to that. And I also wanted to ask you about how you can get yourself to be attracted to folks that are actually good for you. But everybody's going to have to wait and read Deeper Dating because that's all we have time for today on Arise News Weekend. Thanks so much for joining us.
So great to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. All right, you're watching Arise News Weekend.
If I was building my own news network, I think I'd want broad, in-depth knowledge of important issues throughout the world.
I would want to recruit a fairly diverse staff that had different life experiences before they came to the news.
We want to see how we can help ourselves and help benefit other people, and not just see what's up with the celebrities and where they're going and traveling and buying this and buying that.
Arise News, every culture, every angle.
The vision here is not just to tell the main stories of the day, but to tell the news that other organizations don't tell, and tell it in a way that people like me, people that look like me, that look like you, are interested in.
Welcome back. Well, it was a footloose and fancy-free Valentine's Day in Pattaya, Thailand, as 9 couples danced their way to a world record there, Pattaya. The couples broke the longest dance marathon record by hoofing it for 35 hours, 1 minute and 1 second. The previous record was set in 2008 by a Mexican couple who danced for 35 hours. The Thailand marathon began last night with 10 couples, but one pair eventually bowed out. Another pair came close to doing the same, but they somehow managed to press through.
I had pain in my legs. I was very depressed. But when all the troubles started to emerge, we continued to fight. Anything could have made me emotional, but in the end, we understood each other.
The winners will share in a cash prize, and as well, they'll get a certificate from the Guinness Book of World Records. Good for them. All right, that's it for the show. I'm Francesca Maxime. Tweet me at Francesca Maxime, and we'll see you next time.